When alerting the emergency services, there's a nice acronym here, and shout out to Pete Morris for including this. It's obvious, really, when you think about it. But of course, when we ring the emergency services, 999, 911, whatever the number is in your part of the world, it's good for them to know the exact location. What 3 words? Shout out to them is a great tool if you've got it. But exactly where is it happening? If we go back a slide to the arena, exactly whereabouts, so people can get in and get out. What type of incident is it? You may not know. May be a bomb, could be people attacking you, could be major water leak, gas leak, whatever it is that's causing catastrophe for your event. Doesn't always have to be terrorism, but it's good to let them know, because then they'll contact everyone else. Any particular hazards, because that will change the response. We saw yesterday on the news the fire department dressed in full CBRN kit. We don't know why yet here in Nottingham, but there's a hazard there that might have been identified, and they were well prepared for that. What's the best way in and out? Access routes, number of casualties and what condition are they in. That will escalate the trauma response that the ambulance service send. Who's already there and who do you need to come? Then, when we talk about control rooms, we can talk about EOCs, event operations, JOCs, JSOCs, GSOCs, inside control, outside control, event control, race control, match control. Sometimes one site can have multiple control rooms, so it can be, the venue operational control, the VOC for smaller issues, and then the EOC for emergency issues and incidents. Sometimes there's very prescriptive definitions between what is an issue and what is an incident, and which control room is going to look after what. So we can sometimes have Sierra control and Alpha control, and it's good to work out, if there's multiple control rooms on site, who has primacy, who is the top dog, who is going to tell the other control room, actually, my decision is this, and you're going to follow this out. And what terminology are we using to define that? Are we using the terms gold, silver, bronze, strategic, tactical, operational, decision makers? Maybe not commanders, but key decision makers. And when it comes to those key decision makers, how often do we come across people in the control room who work for a company, but the key decision maker is out and about on the ground because they own the company, or vice versa? And that doesn't always matter, because the owner of the company might have delegated a series of decisions and have a really trusted, really great control room operator they've worked with for a long time. I can think of a number of examples straight off the top of my head where that happens, and it works great and it works fine. But they're well experienced, well trusted, and they've documented what they do and why they do it. So in the absence of any of that, you have that major incident and you push it through that mess, then we're going to have some serious questions to answer. And do they really work? So essentially, control rooms, when you break them down, are about inputs and outputs, and they go through the sausage machine, which is the key decision makers. And we get our inputs from several different functional areas. So on the left-hand side of the screen, we've got a list of functional areas from security to ticketing as an example. It's not an exhaustive list. They are going to contact the control room using radio, phone calls, WhatsApps, or other technology. And then in that control room, they need to manage it, but it's often the same human being, the same person who's managing simultaneously sometimes a number of radio channels. We've got a big event this summer. We worked it last summer, and one of our team was listening to 4 radio channels at once. So they're all blended on her end, and she can speak to everybody individually, but it's all just four merged radio channels. And then on top of that, you get the phone calls. On top of that, you get the WhatsApps. And then if anything happens at the output side, it's okay when it's fairly routine, and we've got something simple coming through and passing through the sausage machine and being put out the other end. But we come back now to those key decision makers. Who's in that room? How are they managing those comms? How are they keeping them like Olympic runners in their running lanes, and then sharing the information that needs to jump across the lanes? And these are the problems with these question marks over control rooms. And it comes down to 10 kind of problems, really. When you have a system like that, with all of those inputs across those multiple communication types in a room where you've got multiple agencies working together, incidents can be forgotten about. And they can be forgotten about because they compete in the same space. So that radio channel, if there is a missing bag that gets reported at the same time as a fight gets reported, all of the resources, the mental resources, the physical people going to help, all gets allocated towards the fight. And once that's sorted out, 10 or 15 minutes later, we may or may not even remember there was a missing bag or a found bag or a suspicious bag. And if there's a flurry of WhatsApps, how do we come back to it? And if we're typing it into spreadsheets, how do we remember to go back to it? And it's not that it's not perfect. Nothing's perfect, but it's hard work, and it doesn't need to be as hard as it is. Somebody asked me, I was in a control room the other day, and somebody said, "Have you got the rods?" Rods for what, mate? What's I'm not. What do you mean? Oh, the record of decisions. Christ! But that's because they're from the military, and that's what rods are. But of course, when it comes to speaking different languages, there are some tools in some control rooms that can harmonise language, that can give us one set of things to refer to. I'm going to make what I believe is a safe assumption and say not many, if any of you on this call have ever been in charge when Ipswich have played Norwich. That's the table on the left-hand side. And going down the left-hand side are all the different locations, the key locations for the Ipswich versus Norwich football match, soccer match. And then we've got time running across the top, 9:30, 9:45, every 15 minutes, all the way through to 11:30. And we've got some colour coding. What's a 2, what's a 3, what's a 4? Now, if you've never worked this game before, if you were going to be in command at Ipswich versus Norwich this year, I'm sure you would agree with me that New Cardinal Street, if you find that as a location down the left-hand side, it's about the 5th row. Didn't have anything happening at 10:45, 11, 11:15, 11:30. There was nothing going on. The resources in that location every 15 minutes were reporting they were at condition 2, which at the scale on the right-hand side is very quiet. There had some crowds gathering, but numbers were lower than expected. It was very low. Thank you very much. I'm stood on New Cardinal Street. I've got nothing to do. I'm going to eat my sandwich and do nothing. My mere presence alone in my yellow jacket is fighting crime and evil. Leave me alone. Now, the people at the Station Hotel in Fisherman's Corner, it's kicking off. There's a change in mood. They've got some crowd becoming more difficult. They're not having a happy time. So if you were planning this next year and they were at condition 5, would you not move the resources from New Cardinal Street that have done nothing all day? You could half them, and then a year after, you could get rid of them altogether. What about the railway station? Things started to drop off after people started coming through at 11 o'clock. So we're seeing a downward trend in risk. Couldn't they have been recycled, M-bust, and gone from the railway station to the Station Hotel? That's going to be pretty close, right? If it's got the same name, that's not a bad assumption. So what we're saying is, in the absence of any skills training, command courses, 5-day courses for $4,000 here and there, whatever it is you've done, we've immediately got one common language, one common operating picture, where no matter what background you've got, if you're holding this in your hand and you're told to look out a window and describe a crowd, you're going to go, yes, about a 9, mate. So when we look at Miller's Law, they're the limits of short-term memory. And actually, it shows that when people are presented with a number of various stimuli, performance is near perfect doing 5 things at once, but it declines the more things you have to do. And on average, people can do 7 things at once, plus or minus 2. And I'm stood there and you can see that people are queuing up to get inside Tent 1. They're the people on the bottom end of the picture. Then there's a row of Harris fencing. Then they're queuing up to get inside Tent 2, which are the people at the top end of the structure, because both tents are opposite each other, because they've moved. And nobody can get in because the tents are full. no security presence. There's 5 police officers on site, and seconds after this photo was taken, the Harris fencing at the top we see give way, and then a girl on the other side who was in the smoking area gets trapped underneath. And I'll have the harrowing memory forever of the Harris fencing pressed against her face as she struggled to breathe. Nobody in the crowd can see it other than those that are immediately nearby, which gives us the unfortunate responsibility of rushing to the bottom of the steps. We went into a quick V formation and had to fight our way through the crowd, which caused us almost more problems when we were coming back out than it did when we were going back in. But life was at risk, and we got her out. We got the fence up. Everybody calmed down, and after 5 or 10 minutes. But it was ridiculous. It was the near miss that never should have happened. And all the factors that complicate all of this, and the pressure that crowd was under, people will know more than me what pressure it takes to bend those from human weight alone. People on this channel will know more than me what pressure it takes to snap these ropes as well. There's a picture of a snapped rope there, or one that's come out of its coupling, one or the other. I think it did actually shear from memory. And then you can also see on the floor, whilst that is not the best of photos, actually in depth, there were hundreds of NOS canisters. So is it reasonably foreseeable that the crowd that go to this event will want to get inside and see the artists that they paid for? Yeah, I think it was. Was it reasonably foreseeable that they couldn't do that because they couldn't fit in? Was it reasonably foreseeable that the tents had been a different place when we turned up? I don't think it was. That was a surprise. But having seen that all day long, we got these reassurances that everything would be okay, everything would be okay, everything would change. But it built up to its inevitable conclusion. And from a control room perspective, what was written down and when became examined in minute detail at the hearings that subsequently followed. Around reviewing these people's license, about the near misses, about the injuries that people had. And at this point, there was a question around, well, actually, if we just move the fence, we can carry on. But there was a show stop. There was a full evacuation of the site, not an emergency evacuation, but there was just nothing that led us to believe after 6 hours of continued structural failure of the management team and of the actual buildings, that this just wouldn't repeat itself and that someone would die. But when we stop listening, we'll soon be surrounded by people who don't talk to us. So be kind, be curious, and remember that we only get better by playing with people better than us